Ladies and gentlemen, it is time. It is time for some very important content. This is the topic suggested by the first person from the Patreon rework to give an idea. And they said they appreciate the mindfulness content, they had read the book, and were curious about more thoughts on dealing with losing streaks and losing in general. So fortunately or unfortunately, I find myself here at this moment. You see this match history? This is 17 games per page, and we have won 4 of them. 17 minus 4, if anyone has stayed awake in any math class at any point in their lives, is what? 13. 13 losses out of 17, and we have a current running streak of 7 losses. Amazing. StarCraft is a very competitive game, and 1v1 the objective is to defeat your opponent. If you win, you feel pretty satisfied, excited, thrilled. It's one of the most satisfying video games to win, especially if you're against an opponent of equal or greater skill, or at least similar level skill. Losing feels really bad. The analogy that came to mind for me when I was comparing winning and losing in terms of playing a competitive game like StarCraft is, for a lot of games, you put in the work and then the work shows through in your results and you keep going up and up and up. An example would be an MMO character. In an MMORPG, you have a character that gains in levels. It also gains in its item strength over time. And once you've acquired that item, you get to keep that item and you consistently get stronger. There is some RNG in whether stuff drops, but over time, as you put in more effort and things like that, your power goes up. With ladder, it's kind of like you're mowing the lawn, like mowing the lawn, and you mow and you mow and you mow, and you get to about the end of mowing all the lawn, and then if it wasn't a win, the grass just pops back up. But it's not just popped back up, it's actually higher than it was before, because your MMR went down. So you feel like I have taken a step backwards. My skill has somehow diminished because my MMR has gone down. So the key thing here is to sort out a few different things. What does MMR represent? MMR, which is your matchmaking rating, indicates an average. That's the average of your performance over the ladder games that you've played since you placed your account. It doesn't necessarily mean that that is your skill level. You could be on an upswing, which means you had many good games and your MMR is a little bit higher than you would normally play. You can enjoy that, but at the same time, your average is going to regress to a little bit lower of a point. So don't get too focused on the number of MMR. The main thing that I've done when I have those upswings and downswings is to embrace that like it's the waves of the sea. The sea has its sea level, but at any given point, it could be at the crest of a wave or at the trough of a wave. But it's still the ocean, it's still the sea, it's all that. For a streak such as this, one of the most useful things that I've tried to figure out is look for a theme in a few of the losses to create a criteria for moral victory. Because with this losing streak, you don't always know what caused it. Sometimes you're performing poorly because you didn't get enough rest, or because you're maybe a little bit hungry and hangry. Maybe you faced some BM and some cheese and you're kind of tilted. Maybe you have some social and emotional stuff going on in your life at the time. That's okay. That's part of being a competitor in a really difficult video game, is your physical condition and your emotional condition and your clarity of mind matter a whole bunch. You can't always be perfectly clear, perfectly focused, perfectly ready. So you forgive yourself and you say, okay, for whatever reason, I'm not fully with it at the moment, but I can still practice. So you go from I want to move up the ladder right now and have a shinier portrait border to I want to practice something. Because by playing a match, I can refine some elements of what it means to play Zerg, Terran, or Protoss. So what could those be? Let's crack open a replay here. Let's do 3 replays. So we've lost the last 7 games in a row. we're going to look for a couple common themes. And the best thing to focus on, in my opinion, is the first couple slip-ups. I'm just going to take my vision here, and we're going to go through this progression because I've lost many games, and we want to figure out what is something that I can practice here. So I'm making my overlord. That seems pathed correctly. I'm giving some attention to my drones. Not everything is of equal importance early on. Sometimes you see streamers or pro gamers doing a bunch of fancy pants micro early on, but mainly you want to focus on the broad strokes of what was messed up. Supply blocks, maybe you missed an inject, maybe you messed up something with your build. And this assessment of what went wrong partially depends on what your plan is. In StarCraft 2, you should have some semblance of a plan, at least in the early game, largely because there's fog of war and you can't see what your opponent is doing from the beginning, so you do have to make some choices in the dark. So my plan here is to go 16 hatch, 18 gas, 17 pool, and then 2 queens, 4 lings, and then a 26 hatch here. That's my plan that we sorted out with a coaching session with Pig for ZVT. So everything looks good so far. We're 100% doing the build as planned, as intended. Wait, what? I just put a 3rd worker into the gas. That's not part of the build. My 19 drone was supposed to be rallied over here. All right. I'll count that as the first mistake because that is not my plan. This is sort of me on autopilot, not super focused on the opening build. This is a birthday stream as well, so there's a very generous outpouring of support, and I'm trying to be grateful of that as it's coming in. And we only have limited attention as people, so oftentimes if there is a distractor in our environment, it's going to impact our performance. So here we lost a drone to the Reaper. My plan for that is to make an extractor or a spore. So a couple things that we can already list off. Let's frame this out matchup by matchup. ZVT, I need to make sure I'm doing my opening build correctly. That means a 26 supply 3rd base. So for the rest of my session, let's just say every time I do that opening build correctly, I'm going to count it as a moral victory for my practice. Fantastic. Let's look for maybe 1 or 2 other things that were mistakes for me here. Let's take a look. 3rd base is coming down. Excellent. Queen is being put to the edge of creep for some creep tumors. This is fine. There's some decision-making potential here between injecting and spreading creep. I wouldn't really count those decisions as mistakes as long as you are using the queen energy and spending your money. Okay, this is the next mistake here. I'm supply blocked for a very long time at 44 supply. Supply blocks are a lot worse early on than they are later because you're trying to establish your economy and you're trying to get ahead. My opponent is not supply blocked, so they can produce stuff. They're making 2 Hellions and an SCV and some different tech stuff. Whereas I have some larva. I'm about to have this inject fall, maybe. But I can't build anything. I can't build drones. I can't build this queen here. I can spread creep. But there you have it. A few really clear mistakes in the early game. We just cracked open a replay, and in the first 5 minutes, we noticed the build was messed up, so I didn't have complete attention on that, and I got a really hefty supply block at 44. Let's take a look at a Zerg versus Zerg game here. Zerg versus Zerg. We can do one of each matchup and try to find a couple things. I think both of these I died to cheese. Okay. Let's take a look at this game. 1 ZVT, we got 2 mistakes. 1 ZVZ. Let's take a look at this. For me personally, whenever I open replays and look at the games, it naturally causes me to be less tilted about the outcome because I understand more. A big part of frustration, I think, for people is losing and making assumptions about why you think you lost, but not seeing some of the basic mistakes that are very easy to fix and adjust for you personally. There will always be things about the matchups that frustrate you and annoy you. Maybe you don't like cannon rushes, maybe you don't like battle cruisers, maybe you don't like people cheesing you in ZVZ. But that's a part of the game. The thing that you have control over is your fundamentals and your skills. That is independent of opponents. It relates to opponents in the matches you play, but that's the thing you have the most control over of in the long term. So you should be looking at these games with some takeaway that can be integrated into your practice. So I'm filling the gas. I see some lings here. There's a decision point here. What is your 12 pool response? You can pull your drones. That is a more micro-intensive approach and try to prevent them from killing the base. Alternatively, you can give up the base and just focus on gaining value from your main here, because if you compare my base mining 16 out of 16 and 3 out of 3, this base is 13 out of 16 right now. So I'm technically earning more money. I'm going to be falling behind in larva, but I'm ahead in income. So I wouldn't really count this as a mistake yet. We are ramping up here. I have my first queen about to come out, making a bane nest. I'm playing it safe here. There are quite a few builds where they go for 12 pool and then a gas, and then they all in you with speedlings. So I'm accounting for this with my bane nest. My queen and my lings are trying to create space for my expansion. The queen is blocking the drone somewhat. I really need to get that base down. That's a very small mistake. I wouldn't really mark that down as one of the things I want to really refine. The lings chasing the other lings is good. I want to know where those are whenever I can. This queen is injecting. I'm making some drones. And this is probably the first major issue here. I'm already behind in queens by 1. Now I'm about to be behind in queens by 2, which is disastrous. I have enough lings to defend the queen, but they're out of position. So what I could have done better here is have this queen stationed at the ramp. There was no objective for the queen to accomplish anything in front of my natural expansion. You can't lay a creep tumor. There's no overlord here. There's really no reason for her to be that far forward. She should be here so that the new queen can help her out and the lings can run over there and defend. This is a really classic thing to focus on for anchoring your ZVZ defense. It doesn't really matter which particular cheese it is. If you opened hatch first, or if you even just have 2 queens at the ramp is one of the best moves that you can do. You see lings rushing across the map, get the queens to the ramp. That allows you to isolate the problem so that it's only at one location as opposed to units running back and forth between your bases. And one of the things that is fortunate or unfortunate about StarCraft is the mistakes or successes early on heavily impact the rest of the game. In this game, I'm basically dead. The opponent has, what, 2 bases? They have 2 bases, 4 queens. They're mining off 2 bases. My base is not even done yet. And I only have 1 queen. I had to make a 2nd queen from the main. I guess that's a 3rd. Instead of making a lair, which delays my spire. And we can see, I'll just zoom through here, why that's really impactful. The lair is delayed by making another queen. And then I drop my spire, but that spire could have been earlier if that 2nd queen was kept alive, and then I could start my lair right after. So I'm only just now able to make mutas when I could have been making them a bit sooner. I even have the money for them. So this is a pretty big kind of sequence of errors that ended up being a victory for my opponent. The takeaway from this ZVZ is the queen should be very, very pinned to the expansion and should stay by the ramp and not get pulled away. I even fell for a similar trick here. The opponent pulled my attention with a queen and then rushed a bunch of lings into my base. So for ZVT, to review, I've lost a whole bunch of games in a row, and we've lost, 14 out of the last 17 games? Or maybe it's 13. My build in the opening stage was not correct. I didn't take my third at the right time, and I was supply blocked at 44. Let's look at a ZVP here to round things off, get all 3 matchups as we're talking about coping with losses and losing streaks in StarCraft 2. And oh boy, this one is a doozy of a game. This one I remember. Okay, first Overlord going across the map, going to a safe spot on the high ground, making our second Overlord, and oh my goodness, the first mistake of the game is already in the first 30 seconds of the match. The first 30 seconds of the match, Francisco, the funny business Overlord, is going the wrong way. My plan for Overlord pathing is Oscar. The first Overlord goes across the map to see what the wall off is, and then park at the high ground to scout this gas, and then kind of see what's happening here. Really nice movement there. My second Overlord is meant to go over my natural, peek at this third base location, and then go back to the natural. The reason for that is I want to look for things like Proxy Gateway Zealot, but then I want to have a really close eye on cannon rushes. Let's see. Let's see what happens here. Getting my other drones here. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness, another mistake. This might seem like a small mistake, but it is a mistake in ZVP. This is a lazy building setup. This is kind of how you would do it in ZVZ. This would be fine in ZVT, but in ZVP, if there's a cannon rush here, you're going to lose both of these things, which are absolutely crucial for playing Zerg. You need a spawning pool, period. What Protoss cannot do is cannon rush over here without you seeing it pretty quickly and easily. So my gas should be here, and my pool should be here. These also serve as little barriers for you later on against Warp Prism Zealot in the main. At my level of play, this ends up being very important. So I'm going to count this as a mistake. Mistake number 1, my second Overlord went the wrong way. It needs to watch the natural for funny business. Mistake number 2, my gas and pool need to be on the far side of my main, so I'm not vulnerable to losing all of my stuff to a cannon rush. And wouldn't you know it, there's a happy buddy right here by my base. Pylon, cannon, cannon. And now I see it, but it's too late. This could be canceled. And this is a 17-minute game, but this opening scenario, I think, gave the Protoss such a massive advantage that we were able to fight with them for the rest of the match, but the usefulness of analysis drops off pretty hard if you get into a position where you're extremely far behind. So we'll call this a good game. And now we have some notes for all 3 matchups. Matchup number 1, ZVT. My opening build should be correct. I have decided on my opening build, and I should be taking my third at 26 supply. I should be having 2 workers in gas, and then pulling 1 off, and then getting wing speed after my third queen. I know what the build is. I need to focus on doing that correctly. Since I'm not in my best condition right now, my sleep was a little bit off. We're having a celebration stream, so I'm thanking people for all their generous support. We can still enjoy ladder and we can still play games even though we're not playing at our very best. For ZVZ, I want to have queens hold position at the ramp in the front of my mind for dealing with cheese. And then against Protoss, I want to make sure Francisco, my second Overlord, is monitoring my natural expansion for cannon rushes. For a fun reminder, it's 2 drones per probe, 4 drones per building for defending cannon rushes with drones. Additionally, you can do 2 gas layer into Ling, Ravager, Queen, Nidus to respond if you're not able to defend your natural. So those are the 3 matchups, kind of using replay analysis to figure out how to assess your losing streak and get something of value so that you can improve your practice, as opposed to falling into the vortex of sadness and wondering if you're getting worse as a player and all this. If you practice and if you set clear goals for yourself, you can have fun and you can feel like you're enjoying the game and moving forward, even if you're not necessarily moving up in MMR in every session. Usually you're going to have something that's close to break even over the long term. Maybe you're moving up slightly month by month, but you're going to be winning about the same amount of time that you lose. So you may as well learn to embrace your losses and find out something useful from those losses. Another thing to bear in mind too is you can consider winning as a triumphant showcasing of your skill. You can prove that you can defeat opponents at your tier, and you can figure out how to get ahead and then close games. On days like this, where it's almost all losses, you are actually the MMR fairy, or the Johnny Appleseed of MMR, just distributing it to all the people who get to feel very happy, and they get to feel very smart and very strong and very capable. And that's just someone who you've made their day. There was a Terran barcode who was so excited by beating someone with the clan tag root that they manner paused at the end and then asked if they could join the clan. They must have been so happy by that. But if I won, they wouldn't have been so happy. So I think that's a pretty good conversation about how to survive through these losing streaks. Don't beat yourself up too much. I know it sucks. It feels really bad. But at the same time, there is some value in all the mess. Something that you can learn and improve upon. And you can also build some character and just practice your skills of resilience as a person in general. Because the ultimate takeaway of playing a game like StarCraft that's really competitive is not just playing the game for the sake of playing the game, but playing the game as a way to know yourself and improve upon yourself in the general human capacity of being able to be respectful to people who maybe are upsetting to you. If they cannon rush you and you still GG, that's a very powerful, bold move because it's upsetting. But even though you're upset, you don't compromise your respect and your manners. That's a thing that you can apply to other aspects of your life. If people are coming at you with a lot of angry energy and you can be collected and calm and converse with them and de-escalate the situation and find some resolution, that's a life skill. That's a big deal. And that's what you should remember with this StarCraft play. It's not just about your immediate results. It's not about impressing people. It's about you having as much fun as you can and learning as much as you can as a person and as a player of video games. So how about that? You can survive losing streaks. I believe in you. Okay. Thank you very much. I'm going to catch up with the alerts now. That was a little conversation that was suggested by someone from the new Patreon rework, so I muted the alerts. I did see we got an excellent raid from Livy B. Thank you very much for that. And she gifted 10 subs for the happy birthday times. Blessed. And Jorochi gifted 5 subs. Absolutely fantastic. I am the Lex. Thank you for the 7 months. What's your thoughts on player plateau skill up for a long time? I just did a very specific and focused piece of content. If you would like to suggest a topic, join the $5 tier on Neuro's Patreon that has just been reworked. I will show you. I will show you here. Ba-da-ba-dum. Neuro Patreon. Wow. $1 tier, you get the book. $2 tier, you get to vote on suggested topics. $5 tier, you get to suggest topics for videos. This video that I just did was suggested by someone through the Patreon. Can you believe it? And then the $50 tier is Kessnuts. You are Kessnuts. Kessnuts is a mighty and good man. Keep it up. It's a bit of an inside joke. Kessnuts has been on the $50 tier for like 3 years. You bet I did this losing streak on purpose?